Hi, this is Dr. John McCormick, and welcome to the Pulse of Healthcare. Today I'm sitting here with Peter, and our topic for the day is going to be what does it cost? And that's a pretty broad thing to say. What does what cost, right? But really, what we're trying to do is have a short discussion on what is the actual cost of a procedure or an activity, specifically if you're seeking one of those higher level medical procedures at a hospital or a surgery center or something like that. So, as we know from our previous discussions, the costs seem to be all over the place. But why is that?
Well, I will tell you, Dr. John, as a person who is using the medical industry, shopping is something that's absolutely required in that prices for the same procedure, even the same drugs, are so widely varied across where it's available.
Well, Peter, you said something that was pretty interesting. You said the word quote unquote shopping, right?
Yep.
But we all know if you're in one of the major medical plans, there's no shopping. They tell you who to see as a specialist. They tell you where you're going to get the procedure. You know, you're going to pay your copay, co-insurance, deductible at whatever facility. So you don't even get a vote, right? And most of the time, you don't even know what it's going to cost. You know, and once again, we're to that. Why is the healthcare industry so different of an activity than anything else we would quote unquote shop for? Services, food, whatever. Why is it different?
Well, that's a great question, Dr. John. I look to you for your insight from the last 10 years, 20 years of experience in the industry as it has evolved into its current broken state.
Yeah, I mean, we would have to go to a nice little long history lesson, and we might do that in another podcast to talk about how we ended up where we are today in the medical system and through those evolutions in the 40s and 50s and 60s that actually led us to Medicare, Medicaid, and some of the broader large commercial plans that you see today, even through the HMOs in the 1970s and things like that. But just to narrow down our conversation for today, let's just kind of set some baselines. So in the industry, what they consider to be the baseline cost. So if somebody says, what is it that I should pay or what is it that the market is accepting, that's generally the Medicare rate, right? So if we look at it, there's three major payers in the system. Medicare, which is for your 65 and older crowd, and that's the base rate that you see at a lot of hospitals and where a lot of people, when they talk about usual and customary and use terms like that inside the industry, what they're really saying is the Medicare rate plus some percentage, right? Then you have Medicaid, which is state-sponsored, generally for the lower income, and those rates are actually slightly less than Medicare, right? So now we've got two tiers of rate payment. I'm not going to say service, I'm going to say rate payment. So if I'm in poverty and have Medicaid and my appendix goes out and I go in for an appendicitis, the hospital that does that appendicitis is going to get paid X amount of dollars. All right? If I'm over 65 and have appendicitis and I go in there with Medicare, they're going to get paid a little more dollars, right?
Right.
Now, from the hospital side of that, the hospital will argue that Medicaid and Medicare don't pay enough, all right, to actually cover their medical expenses and the cost it takes to operate the facility and keep all the staff and all of those different things that come with running a business, right?
Correct.
And I'm not here to dispute or even argue that. I mean, we could talk about accounting and cost accounting and how hospitals account and those kinds of things and whether that's enough or not and what they ought to do about it, as far as getting their reimbursement rates up or whatever. All of those are certainly things worth arguing about. But what the way the system's set up right now is they can't beat the government and they can't beat the state. So who do they beat up on? the employer. So small, medium, and large employer groups, now seeking the same service could pay 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 times as much for the same procedure under their plan than what the hospital's collecting from Medicare or Medicaid. So what's the cost?
Well, one of the questions that I have as somebody who's been looking at medical bills is, what are all the codes? Because the codes are priced differently as well, and they could send me the list, but I have no idea what they are. I just see the total at the bottom.
Right, and so those are CPT codes, and so the government in its infinite wisdom basically said, if we're going to reimburse for all of these services, we're going to assign these unique codes to each and every one, and there's CPT codes and ICD-9 codes and ICD-10 codes and so on and so forth, thousands of them, thousands. And part of the No Surprise Act that passed several years ago now, was to make portions of these codes and ultimately all of these codes, quote unquote, shoppable. We're back to your word, shoppable, right? So people that did not want to engage in health care through a major carrier, weren't eligible for Medicare, weren't eligible for Medicaid, wanted to get the cash rate, working with a plan like Ovation Health that does cash rate pricing and things like that. That was the goal, that they would say hospitals have to be transparent with their cost by CPT code. So you can literally shop it. So I could look at, Hospital A and say, hey, the appendicitis at Hospital A is $20,000. At Hospital B, it's $30,000. And Hospital C, it's $60,000. And then I could make a consumer-based decision on where I want to get my care done. And then take that even a step further and go, I could get my appendicitis removed at maybe one of these higher-end, surgery centers, and it could be $10,000. And those kind of things blow my mind because, the surgeons that do these procedures, whether they're at the hospital or at the surgery center, are the same people.
Yep.
They do a surgery at a hospital one day, they're at a surgery center another day. And that's because what the physician's getting paid, that surgeon's getting paid, all right, is a minor portion of the total bill. A lot of your bill is for the facility in which it's taken care of, right?
Yep. Now, one of the questions that comes up, and maybe it's a discussion for another time, is with all these varying rates and different charges that are taking place, I've seen the growth of self-insured plans, particularly along small and mid-sized businesses. How does the self-insured businesses handle those type of charges?
And that's kind of a double-bladed question there. Okay, so here's the deal. If you want to self-insure, and I highly recommend it, if you have 50 employers or more, you ought to be looking at self-insurance. If you have 100 employees or more that are taking care, and you're not self-insuring, you're probably throwing money away. All right? Now, I say that with a caveat because I said it's double-bladed, right?
Right.
Because who your plan is, who your TPA is, third-party administrator, that's the people that negotiate and play claims on your behalf. If you're an employer, you're hiring a third-party administrator to be your fiduciary, to keep their eye on the ball, make sure you're not overpaying for medical, make sure you're not overpaying for pharmacy, all of those things, right? Well, guess what? The major carriers offer TPA services for self-insurance. The problem is they're basically saying, we'll do this for you, but they're putting it on the same bad chassis that they're running their other plans on. And of course, it's caused a lot of lawsuits over the years because what happens is large companies go, well, we took on one of these major carriers and we're self-insured and they're looking out for us, except they're not. they're using all the same contracts they use for their own major medical. They're using all the same stuff. So really what's happening is you're still overpaying for medical. If you're dealing with, CVS or Optum Health, they're not only on the medical side, they're on the pharmacy side. There's no incentive for these large carriers that you may be self-insuring through, all right, to actually save you any significant money. So where you might be saving a little bit of money on reinsurance premiums and things like that, you're really not realizing the full benefit of savings that's available to you if you're using a plan like Ovation Health, or one of these TPAs that actually understands the marketplace and how to engage in that in such a way that you're actually paying what I would consider a fair rate for services.
The point that I'm really getting out of this conversation is people have to educate themselves as to what their alternatives are and manage their own health services that they want and what they think is affordable for what they get. There's just so many options out there and so much confusion in a broken system that they need to call and ask a professional like yourself or some of the people here at Ovation Health in order to get the right choice for their needs.
And then that's absolutely right. I mean, you got to face it. There's a reason that people know the names of the major medicals. They dominate 80 to 90% of the market in some places for the same reason that if you were to ask about, different hospitals, people could rattle off hospitals and you go, well, why would people know that, right? Well, because they're spending millions of dollars on advertising. Because if you drive down the road, you're going to be able to see billboards for hospitals all over the place competing with each other because they build, $600 to $1 billion palaces to perform your surgery in. Well, all of those things get paid for, and they get paid through your bill, and that includes I hate to say it, the really, really exorbitant salaries that are earned by these CEOs and CFOs that manage these hospitals, that are making millions of dollars a year. You're paying for that. So you pay for the billboard, you pay for the salary. The weird thing is, the CEO of one of these hospitals could make $6-7 million a year, but the surgeon that actually worked on you is just making a few $1,000s for that surgery, and the hospital's billing $200,000 for the deal. And it's like there's a huge disconnect in the reimbursement and driving that reimbursement down to the people that are actually doing the job.
It's gotten a lot more confusing than it used to be, and a lot more complicated.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, if we think back to, I hate to say the early days, but I mean, really, communities had primary care physicians for the most part, and people went to them and they paid them or bartered with them, like I'll bring you 2 chickens and you see my. I mean that's the reality of it, right?
Right.
And then what we've done is continue to break that down. So now the primary care's role has been significantly diminished when it should have been increased. And we have all these incentives for people to ultra specialize. All right. And we herald that like they're the super duper specialist on ears. Well, that's great. But let's face it, 99.5% of the people in the world don't need somebody that's the ultra specialist in ears to pay them an exorbitant amount of money. You might need 1 or 2 of these guys. You certainly don't need a bunch of them, right? And so we've perverted the incentive system, and then I hate to say laundered the money. We've laundered the money, though, through these major medical carriers with all these different invisible contracts. So you don't even know what you're paying for what and how that's driving your cost. So you as a consumer that might have something that was easily handled by a primary care because of the roles that they've been cast in, and they're like, oh, I don't know about that. You better go see a specialist, because the primary care is kind of in this push it off to the specialist loop. And then the specialist, are super busy, and then they're like, well, I get a teeny tiny bit of money for you to come into my office to see you to manage your care, but I get way more money if I do a surgery on you. So what we've done is, I hate to say it, we've incentivized unnecessary surgeries and done a lot of other things instead of incentivizing health.
This is fascinating, Dr. John. I think it is a discussion we can do a lot more conversations with on.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so when we talk about what's the cost of care, the cost of care, in one word, is ignorance. It really is. Most of the population just doesn't know how the system works. So it's so important and so critical to kind of shift your mindset and say, you know what, I don't need to have some major carrier, out there that really I'm, 1/1,000,000th of their population. I'm much better off maybe with a little smaller operation that values my business, that's actually looking out for me as an individual within the plan and as my small or medium or even large group employer, where I might be a larger percentage of that company's or that TPA's business. But you know what? That means they're going to give me better service. They're going to be focused on me. They're going to know my name. They're going to know my people. I'm not just going to be, member 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and when I call in, I'm on a 4-hour hold just to be told, well, I'm sorry, that's what your plan pays. Have a nice day. Click. There's no education on that. And
Right.
There's no recourse a lot of times,
That makes a very strong argument for the use of patient advocates like we have to negotiate those bills and help, from the patient's point of view, make it an affordable surgery.
Really 3 words, right? Guide, facilitate, advocate. I mean, that's what we do, and if I had to add a 4th word to that, I'd say educate. And so, a lot of our members and a lot of our groups have been with us a long time. That's the secret sauce, right? The members are educated. They understand how to use the plan. They're willing to reach out and get the advocacy that they need, allow us to do what we do, which is act as their concierge, set up their services, and actually mitigate the cost, so that the facility, the physician are being fairly reimbursed based on the market standard, right? So not underpaid, but not robbed either. We're not letting our members get highway robbery, right? So those are the kind of things I think that really, really make a difference. And now we're coming into renewals. A lot of people are going to be looking down the throat of 10, 15, 20% rate increases. This is the time, folks. We encourage you to look at that and go, what is the cost? What am I paying for? And does the plan I have, does the TPA I have, and sometimes does the broker I have, are they really looking out for my best interest and helping me get the best plan for the price that I'm paying?
That's great. I appreciate your time this morning.
Well, as always, Peter, great having a conversation with you. If you'd like to listen to more podcasts from Dr. McCormick, you can go to our website at ovation.health. Look for podcasts. You can listen to all of them. Thank you very much. Have a good one.